All right, so get ready because today we're going deep into the world of serial killers.
Well, fun.
But we're not talking about like the usual, American true crime stories.
Right, right.
Today we're heading down to Brazil to explore the life of Pedro Rodrigues Filho,
Oh, wow. Okay.
aka Killer Petey.
Interesting.
And for this deep dive, we're going to be looking at the Case File podcast episode,
Okay.
Case 127, Killer Petey.
Case file is good stuff.
Mhm.
I've listened to that one before.
Yeah, and this one is, well, let's just say it's a wild ride.
I bet.
So I think what makes this case so fascinating is that it really kind of like challenges
Yeah.
how we normally think about serial killers, you know?
I agree. I mean, it's not just like a list of, terrible crimes.
Right.
It's about like how this guy's upbringing, Brazilian culture, this really distorted
Yeah.
sense of morality all came
Mhm.
together to create someone so complex.
Totally. So,
Yeah.
like, the episode starts off by talking about his childhood in rural Brazil.
Okay.
And it was rough, like, really rough.
I mean, yeah, rural Brazil in those days.
We're talking poverty, domestic abuse, animal cruelty, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
Like, get this right. He was actually born with a skull deformity
What?
because his father kicked his pregnant mother in the stomach.
Oh, my God.
I mean, how do you even recover from something like that?
That's brutal.
It's insane, right? And, we talk a lot on the show about the impact of childhood trauma.
We do. Yeah.
I mean, that kind of repeated exposure to violence, especially that early on,
Yeah.
it can seriously mess with someone's brain development.
For sure. It desensitizes you to aggression, makes it more likely that you'll resort to violence yourself.
It's like his brain was literally being wired for violence from day one.
Right.
And then you add in this other layer, the influence of his grandfather, Zhao Kim.
Okay.
So this guy teaches Pedrinu, like, survival skills, hunting self-defense, all that stuff.
Okay, so kind of like hardening him up even more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he also instills in him this deep sense of, like, justice and
interesting.
righteousness.
So you've got this kid surrounded by brutality.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's being taught this strict moral code.
Yeah.
It's like a recipe for serious inner turmoil.
Right. And you can see that turmoil playing out when Pedrinu is just 13 years old.
Oh, God, he's a teenager already.
There's this incident at a sugarcane mill that the episode describes.
Okay.
His cousin punches him.
Oh, okay.
And Pedrinu just, like, snaps.
What does he do?
He tries to shove this kid into a sugarcane press.
Oh, my God.
Like, he's ready to crush him.
That's intense.
He even grabs these pruning shears.
Pruning shears.
Yeah, like he's gonna, like, cut the kid up to make him fit or something.
Jeez.
I know, it's scary, right? And it shows you just how warped his sense of justice already is.
Yeah, like even at that age, he thinks he has the right to inflict that level of punishment.
Exactly. And I think it really makes you wonder
Yeah.
how much of his, like, tendency towards violence was nature versus nurture.
It's the age-old question, right?
It is, and in this case, it seems like both played a pretty significant role.
Yeah, it's never that simple, is it?
Never. But things take a really dark turn when Pedrinu's father is, like, wrongfully accused of theft.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he loses his job, and it sends the family into, like, total hardship.
So this is like the breaking point.
Yeah, it's like this event just flipped a switch in him.
Okay.
He becomes obsessed with revenge.
On who?
The deputy mayor and the daytime guard.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He blames them for his dad's situation.
So he goes after them.
Oh, yeah. It's like all of a sudden he's super methodical planning these murders.
This is scary.
I know, right? It's cold calculated.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he's like restoring balance.
Right. He's right and wrong.
He's like the judge, jury, and executioner.
It's that twisted sense of justice again.
Yeah. He believes he's above the law, the ultimate decider of who lives and dies.
And this is just the
No,
beginning.
this is just the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately.
Wow. Okay. So where do things go from here?
Well, next we're going to follow Pedrinu as he descends into the criminal underworld of Sao Paulo.
Oh, man. The plot thickens.
Things are about to get a lot darker.
I'm ready when you are.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so we've got this guy, right? Pedrinu, this super complex dude, driven by this messed up sense of justice
Yeah.
and this, like, morbid fascination with violence.
Right.
And he ends up in the Brazilian prison system in the 70s.
Oh, man.
I mean, talk about a nightmare scenario.
I've heard stories about those prisons.
Yeah, it's like straight out of a horror movie.
So what was it like for him inside?
Brutal. Just absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, the Case File episode really lays it out.
Okay.
We're talking like extreme overcrowding, disease, rampant gang warfare,
Wow.
and guards who were basically just there to make sure nobody escaped. They didn't care about rehabilitation or anything like that.
It sounds like a breeding ground for even more violence.
Exactly, it was. And so you have Pedrino, right? This young guy, already notorious for his crimes,
Right?
walking into this chaos surrounded by like hardened
I
criminals.
can't even imagine.
I know, right? You'd think he'd be totally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
What?
He didn't just survive. He thrived in that environment.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. He like honed his fighting skills, established himself as someone you don't mess with.
So he adapted.
He adapted. He became a predator in a jungle of predators.
Wow, that's intense.
I know, but the thing is, even in this like totally lawless environment, he still operated with that messed up sense of justice.
What do you mean?
Like he would target rapists, pedophiles, abusers, anyone he considered deserving of punishment.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like he created his own moral code within this chaotic system.
Yeah.
He was judge, jury, and executioner all rolled into one.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
It is. It really makes you think about the whole concept of rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Like, if the prison itself is just a factory for more violence,
Right.
what hope is there for someone like Pedrino?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, but before we get too deep into that,
Okay.
we need to talk about this, like, pivotal moment in Pedrino's life.
Okay.
His mother is murdered.
Why?
His own father.
Oh, my God.
It's like this horrific act that unleashes a whole new level of rage in him.
Yeah, bet.
And the way he takes revenge, it's brutal. I mean, like, really, really brutal.
What did he do?
He escapes from his cell, cracks down. His father stabs him, like, over and over again.
Wow.
And then, get this, he cuts out his father's heart and takes a bite out of it.
Oh, my God.
I know, it's like something out of a nightmare,
Yeah.
but I think it shows you the depth of his pain and rage.
Yeah. And like a need for control.
Totally. It's like he had to completely obliterate the person who caused him so much suffering.
It's like something fundamentally shifted in him after that.
Oh, absolutely. He becomes known as the Punisher.
Wow.
And that label, that persona, it just fuels his descent into darkness.
So now he's embracing this identity.
He is. And, you know, we have to remember we're getting all this information from Case File,
Right.
which is based on Pedrino's own accounts, court records, media reports.
So there's always a chance that things are being exaggerated or distorted.
That's true. We can't take everything at face value, but even with that in mind, the pattern is clear.
What do you mean?
Like there's this story about this young inmate, Claudio.
Okay.
Pedrino takes him under his wing, they become friends, but then Claudio accidentally kills Pedrino's sister.
Oh, no.
And Pedrino doesn't hesitate, he executes him.
Oh, wow.
It's cold-blooded, but he justifies it by saying, "He is my friend, but I just had to kill him. I'm justified."
It's chilling.
It is. It shows you just how deeply ingrained his belief in his own twisted sense of justice is.
And it's around this time that the psychiatrists get involved, right?
They do. They diagnose him as a psychopath.
Oh, wow.
Incapable of empathy or remorse, and their reports are like straight up terrifying.
What do they say?
They describe killings motivated by like the smallest thing, someone's face annoyed him or they snored too loud.
Wow.
It's like he was obsessed with the act of killing itself.
That's scary.
It is, and it gets even weirder. He talks about having dreams where he re-kills his victims.
Oh, my.
It's like his mind is just consumed by violence and trauma.
It's hard to even fathom.
I know, but just when you think things can't get any darker,
Yeah.
this new character enters the picture, Francisco de Isis Pereira.
Who's that?
He's known as the Park Maniac.
Oh, God, another serial killer.
Yeah, he was a serial rapist and murderer, and he ends up in the same prison as Pedrino. And Pedrino, who has appointed himself the ultimate judge,
Right.
he publicly declares that he's going to kill this guy.
Wow.
It's like a real-life superhero movie gone wrong.
Yeah, except there's nothing heroic about it.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
just pure vengeance.
And how does the public react to this?
They're captivated. Some people are horrified, obviously.
Yeah.
But others see him as some kind of twisted anti-hero, you know, like he's going to rid the world of another monster.
It's like that vigilante thing again.
Exactly. And then things just explode.
What happened?
A huge prison riot breaks out.
Oh, wow.
And rumors start flying that Pedrino has finally gotten his chance to kill the Park Maniac. Well, everyone thinks so at first,
Okay.
but it turns out to be false.
Really?
Yeah, the Park Maniac actually survives.
Wow. Talk about a plot twist.
I know, right? And the irony is that during the riot, Pedrino is actually found protecting hostages.
What?
Yeah, he misses his opportunity to kill Pereira.
So the guy known for being this brutal killer is protecting people.
It's another one of those contradictions that makes his story so fascinating.
It's crazy.
It is, but that whole incident is kind of overshadowed by what happens next.
What's that?
There's this bizarre quirk in the Brazilian legal system at the time.
Okay.
The maximum prison sentence is 30 years.
Regardless of the crime.
Regardless of the crime.
So even for someone like Pedrinu.
Even for someone like Pedrinu, so in 2003, after serving 30 years, he's suddenly eligible for parole.
You're kidding me?
I'm not. He's got over 400 years of sentences hanging over his head.
Right.
But because of this legal technicality, he could walk free.
Wow. The public must have been freaking out.
It was like a total nightmare scenario. This guy who's confessed to over 100 murders.
Yeah.
Could just walk out of prison and nobody could do anything about it.
It seems insane.
It is. And the authorities, they're scrambling, trying to find some way to keep him locked up.
So what do?
They dig through the legal code and they find this loophole.
A loophole?
Yeah, a clause that lets them extend his sentence for crimes he committed while he was in prison.
Oh, wow. So they're basically punishing him for being a bad prisoner.
Exactly. It's controversial, but it buys them some time.
So does it work?
Well, it delays things, but ultimately it's not a permanent solution.
So what happens?
In 2007, after 34 years behind bars, Pedrinu is released.
He actually walks free.
He does, and the whole world is watching, wondering what this guy's going to do now that he's out.
Right. Will he go back to his old ways, or is there any chance he's actually changed?
It's the question everyone's asking, and that's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive into the life of Killer Petey. Killer Petey's out free, walking the streets like a normal person. Can you imagine?
I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around it, right? This is a man who's admitted to taking so many lives just back into the world.
Yeah, it must have been unnerving for a lot of people in Brazil. Like, what's he going to do?
Totally. And, the Case File episode talks about how there really weren't any solid rehabilitation programs in the prisons back then.
Right, so it's not like they were preparing him for life on the outside or anything.
Exactly. It was more about containment than actually trying to, change him.
Yeah, and that just adds to this sense of is he going to snap? Is he going to revert back to his old ways?
That's a scary thought.
It is, but here's the thing. The episode says that when he first got out, Pedrinu actually tried to stay under the radar.
Really?
Yeah, he moved to this remote area, found work on a farm, kept to himself.
Wow. So it sounds like he was genuinely trying to turn over a new leaf.
It does, right? It makes you wonder if maybe all those years in prison had some kind of unexpected effect on him.
Yeah, maybe. But you also have to remember that the recidivism rates for released prisoners in Brazil were super high back then.
Oh, yeah, so the odds were definitely stacked against him.
For sure. And unfortunately, it didn't last in 2011. He gets arrested again.
What for?
Not for murder this time,
Yeah.
but for involvement in prison riots and weapons charges.
So basically, they got him on a technicality.
Pretty much, it seems like the authorities were just looking for any reason to put him back behind bars.
Yeah, they didn't trust him to stay on the straight and narrow.
Well, with his history, can you blame them?
I guess not, but here's where things get even weirder. Instead of fading back into the prison system, Pedrinu actually becomes even more of a public figure.
What do you mean?
He starts giving interviews, writing an autobiography. He even launches a YouTube channel.
No way. Killer Petey on YouTube. What's he talking about on there?
It's crazy, right? He's basically controlling his own narrative now. He's shaping how people see him.
It's like he's almost become this morbid celebrity.
He has, and people are fascinated by it. They eat it up. The media starts calling him the Dexter serial killer.
Oh, yeah, because Dexter was that show about the serial killer who only killed bad guys.
Exactly. And so Pedrinu kind of gets this weird following. Some people are horrified, obviously.
Of course.
But others see him as this, twisted vigilante.
Right, he's dispensing his own brand of justice.
Exactly. And it all plays into this idea of, myth making.
Yeah.
Especially in a place like Brazil where the lines between right and wrong, good and evil can get really blurry.
It's like he's become this folk hero.
He has, but I think the big question is how much of it is genuine? Is he actually remorseful for what he's done, or is this all just a calculated act to manipulate public perception and stay out of prison?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And the Case File episode doesn't really give us a clear answer.
Right. On one hand, he's saying he's a changed man. He's found God. He regrets his past.
But then on the other hand,
he's still calling himself Pedrinu Matador Killer Petey, and he even brags about a murder he committed after his first release.
It's hard to reconcile those two sides.
Yeah.
It's like he wants to have it both ways.
It's a total mind game, and I think it really speaks to our society's fascination with true crime. You know, we're both repulsed and intrigued by these stories.
For sure, it's like we can't look away, even though we know we probably should.
Yeah, so where does that leave us with Killer Petey? Is he a product of his environment, a man warped by violence and trauma? Or is he a cold-hearted psychopath who is just really good at playing the system?
I don't think there's an easy answer,
Mm.
honestly. His story really makes you question everything you thought you knew about human nature, about good and evil, about the possibility of redemption.
It's like there are no easy answers with this guy. It's just layers upon layers of complexity.
Exactly. And I think what's most unsettling is that his story ultimately reflects back on us. It forces us to confront the darkness that exists within all of us.
That's a heavy thought.
It is, but it's also a reminder that we all have the potential for both good and evil.
And that's what makes Pedrino's story so compelling and so disturbing. It's a story that stays with you long after you hear it.
It definitely does. I think it makes you question everything you thought you knew about the world.
Well, on that note, I think we'll leave our listeners to ponder the enigma that is Killer Petey. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into one of the most fascinating and disturbing true crime cases out there.
Absolutely. It's been a wild ride.
Until next time, folks, stay curious and stay safe.